Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, and welcome to another Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. My name is Eric. I'll be the host for today's conversation. We're excited to have Donny Varney back with us. Donny is the Vice President of Momentum Ministry Partners, longtime pastor. He's wore a lot of hats in the church. Donny, I learned you were a youth pastor. Is that accurate?
I was for 9 years. Yeah.
I knew I liked you. It's awesome.
We have that in common, Eric. Yeah,
That's
not quite as long as you. You pretty much you doubled my tenure, but yeah.
I was just too stupid to quit, I guess. I don't know.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Donny, I've loved the conversations that we've been able to have. It's been fun having you on the podcast. We're going to keep introducing you more and more to our Momentum audience, and God's got great things in store for us as an organization. And I'm just excited because last time we talked, we did an episode early January about how to pursue excellence over perfectionism. And that's something that I really wrestle with. And so I got a lot out of that conversation. But there's a couple things that you mentioned that I thought we should pull back for today's conversation. And so if we could, Donny, I want to couch this in the context. You've had both full-time professional staff that have been under you in all the different hats that you've wore in ministry as a youth pastor and then as a sports ministry pastor. You've built ministries, built teams that build teams. That was, I think, the first episode that you were on with the Momentum podcast. But one of the things I thought we talk about this a lot here at Momentum with our ministry partners, with the churches that we connect with, for Jeff and I, even in the coaching that we do with our cohorts and the training and equipping that we're trying to help people understand. One of the biggest things is how do we equip our staff and our volunteers working through those concentric circles. For us as a key leader, how do we equip them to help people grow and move forward in their faith? So, Donny, that's something I know you're very passionate about. You mentioned even previously you have acronyms for everything, and you love a good acronym. So why don't we kind of dive into this topic a little bit today and just help our listeners think through how do we equip volunteers? Donny, I think the number one question that people ask me, literally this morning, I had breakfast with a youth pastor, and he asked me some version of this question. So I'm just going to start here, Donny, and I'll let you kind of share your perspective and take it away. It's some version of this. How do you equip your volunteers, or maybe cast the vision for your volunteers where they would help own the ministry rather than just viewing themselves as a person who serves within the ministry? What does that look like?
Well, I guess I can't only speak. I can certainly conceptualize and theorize and idealize what it could and should look like for other people, but I can speak from my personal experience trying to lead people, which is, and I think it's probably true for all of our leaders, and I think it's actually the advice that Jethro gave Moses in Exodus 18, which I've referenced so many times. And I'm always blown away, Eric, at how few times that gets brought up in like leadership conversations in ministry. I mean, this whole episode could be about Jethro talking to Moses. And it just seemed as if Moses was like having a moment where he felt pretty good about his situation and all of the people that he was overseeing. And the father-in-law kind of comes in, and Moses like, hey, do you want to like spend a day hanging out with me and seeing how things are going. And then they have like a debrief. And Moses is like, so, what do it's just kind of amazing, all the things that God's done. And he's kind of really talking about, God's really showed up in some pretty big ways. I don't know, Jethro, if you've kind of seen some of the things that I've seen recently with the entire sea parting and millions of people going through. It's been a wild ride. And so now I got all these people and I'm kind of like, I'm the main guy. I'm doing all the things. I'm solving all the problems, and here's how the people are doing it. And Jethro basically, like, there's a verse there in Exodus 18 where he's like, Moses, what you are doing is not good. And he basically says, you've got to figure out a way to get all of these other people doing the things that you're doing. And it's this idea of multiplication. It's this idea of equipping others to do the work that you're doing, because you can't manage 2 million people, Moses. And so he's like, oh, okay, got it. And, most of us don't have 2 million people, probably none of us, that we're talking through. But the advice that Jethro was giving would be for anyone. If you've got more than 2 or 3 or 4 people, you need to start breaking this thing down. If you've got 10 people, who are you equipping to give them a vision that gets beyond yourself? Because the same thing that Jethro told Moses is true for all of us. What we are doing is not good. If we are the bottleneck, if we are this person on stage, if we're the voice, the face, the only person that's leading our ministry, we're in trouble. So I guess that passion that I have, I would, and I've shared this in different contexts, but everyone needs to capture that and understand that. And so quickly, I've just pretty much always, the best I can, Eric, led with this idea of this has to get beyond me really, really fast, because if not, I will be the cap, I will be the limit, I'll be the bottleneck, and we're not going to be able to move people spiritually the way that we feel like God's probably calling us to, if it's about like the leader. So whatever leader is listening, I would just say, find your own way, your own words. There's plenty of other examples in scriptures, but this idea of multiplication and empowering other people and equipping other people to do what you're doing, they have to get a hold of that and believe it. And then they need to experience it, that you're actually, you're leading in such a way where it's very obvious you are for sure entrusting them and giving them these opportunities to do the very things that you're doing as well. So yeah, that's I just think that's really important. So the thing that, and I know you mentioned the acronym, in this context, especially when it comes to moving people spiritually, I've now, for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, I've basically said, what we need to do, guys, is we need to be nice to people. And there's a NICE and E. And I think it just gives it gives people a little bit of a handlebars even on, what we're talking about in terms of helping move people spiritually. So I don't know if we want to jump into that acronym now or not, but that's where I'd want to go with this conversation, is how to be nice to people.
I'm intrigued. And Donnie, you shared this briefly with me the other day when we were kind of brainstorming this podcast and this episode conversation. I wrote them down, but I'm very intrigued of like what this actually looks like when it comes to equipping volunteers, when it comes to building teams, where like kind of that first question, I think a lot of us as ministry professionals, we're trying to figure out exactly what you just said. How does this get beyond me? If you're a small church pastor, youth pastor, children's director, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're trying desperately to build a team, this conversation, I think, is going to play a part in that. So we've teased it long enough. Give us the acronym.
Okay.
If you're driving in your car and listening to this, you might want to write these things down. I'm sure I'll just speak for Donnie. Steal it, make it your own, write a book. But
That's right.
you use this to benefit God's kingdom. Yeah.
Well, many of our listeners, I think, know Jeff Bogue, who is our president here at Momentum, and he has endured through the years a lot of different acronyms that I've thrown out through the years, and some of them he thinks are just ridiculous, and some of them probably neutral, and some of them he rolls his eyes at. I don't know, but from a credibility standpoint, and I would admit that, like, I think in my mind, these acronyms mostly just serve me so I can like keep things straight in my own simple mind. So it's just to help me remember it. But for whatever reason, we were at a leadership retreat. This is several years ago. And Jeff had given all of us a vision of, hey, we've got to help people move spiritually. And the task was really for all of us in our own ministry areas to find ways to to do this. And so I had at one point shared this was how we were doing it. And this has never happened before, probably never happen again. But Jeff literally stopped me after I was done. And he looked at all the other pastors and directors and he said, everyone, write this thing down. What Donny just said is gold. And I was like, all right, I got one.
There you go.
So, and then I got invited to our our leadership summit, and they asked me to share this acronym to all of our leaders of all of the different ministry areas across our entire Bath campus. And so I say that not because I actually don't usually have a good gauge of whether a thought or an idea or an acronym is actually that helpful. But I've been affirmed, I guess, if nothing else, that this seems to make some sense with people. So I know you said, let's not tease this anymore. And then I tease it more. So anyway, here's the acronym. It's if we're trying to move people spiritually, be nice to them. We should establish a network of needs or a network of need meters, people who are trying to meet people's needs, a network of needs. We should incentivize people and not be afraid about that. We should make it convenient. And we need to always and forever lead with expectations, making sure that people understand the expectation that we have and our desire that we want them to move spiritually in some way. So network of needs, incentivize, convenience, expectations. There's a lot to unpack with each of them. I will try not to overwhelm any of us with it, but there's a lot there, but that's the acronym. Yeah.
All right. Now, if you're trying to write that down, maybe you're like me and spelling is hard. Incentivize does start with an I.
That's right. It absolutely does.
Incentivize, I won't try and spell it for you, but it does start with an I. So Donny, break this out for us a little bit. As you've walked, your staff, pastors, even equipping volunteers to understand this, kind of give us an example for each one of those, and help you. You always do a good job of like giving a context to put this in, right? So maybe pick a scenario as an example to walk us through this so that we can kind of see it and how it would make sense to be nice and use this acronym.
Well, just my experience in ministry has been that people get very suspicious and they get very, I think we lose a lot of credibility if the only thing that we ever offer people is something that is directly a part of like our church and our ministry. And so I just feel like as we get to know people and we ask questions and we understand them, and we start to realize like, hey, now I know you a little bit. And I think that is what we should do. We should be developing relationships. We should be equipping our volunteers to develop relationships and to understand people. And the three things that I would always encourage our volunteers is know a need, know a struggle, and know a goal. Maybe you won't know all three of them, but usually most of human beings are built to, as you get to know them to some extent, you'll eventually learn that they have a need. It might be a physical need, might be a financial need, might be a spiritual need. It might be something else, but there's like, we as human beings, we aren't perfect, and we have needs. And as you get to know people, you're like, yeah, that's a need that you have. And I thank you for trusting me enough to let me in that that's a need. Or we have some type of a struggle. Could be a relational struggle, could be a job struggle. It could be a personal struggle. It could be a parenting struggle or a marriage struggle, but we're like, man, I'm just like struggling. There's other people that as you talk to them, they just are very goal oriented and they're very driven. And before you ever find out that they've got needs or they've got struggles, what you kind of learn is they've got goals and they've got ambitions. And we talked about that in our last podcast. Some of us are more wired that way to share, where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do and things like that. And that's still a way that people are at least letting us in on kind of where they want to go in life. And so as you take that information, that precious information that people are relationally giving to you, I just think it's a mistake if the way we try to meet that need or that struggle or come alongside that goal always has something to do with our church and our ministry. Because it basically feels like now all we're doing is saying like, hey, that's a need that you've said, and it would be great for you to come on Wednesday night to this parenting class that we have. And if they only sense and see that the only thing that we're bringing them to is something that, then it feels like we're only selling our ministry. So because of that, and that's a longer segue to this whole thing, but I feel like I got to build it up. Yeah. What we've decided in our sports ministry is to create this, I call it this network of need meters. And they're people, they're organizations that exist where there are networkers, and they are in the same business that we're in, which is we care about meeting people's needs. And to get like hyper practical, what we've created is this thing we call them game changers, and there's like almost 100 of them, and mostly they aren't necessarily like volunteers carrying out the programmatic needs of our ministries. They are just networkers, and they're people who are passionate to meet people's needs. And a lot of the things that they do in their own right may or may not have anything to do with our church. And we see that as a good thing. So that within our ministries, as we're getting to know people and understand them, instead of always pointing them right back to our church, we can point them actually to another organization or another environment or another program that might have nothing to do with Grace Church, but we actually feel like they're doing a really good job of meeting people's needs. And generally speaking, that just goes a long way in building trust and building credibility with people as they realize, like, we're not just here to like grow our church. We're not just here to inflate our numbers or our programs or to get you in our seats so that you can give money to our mission. We actually, first and foremost, want to introduce you to people who we think are going to meet a need that you have as we get to understand that. And so I just think it goes a long way. But in order to do that, though, you have to start to build this army of these need meters, this network of needs, and then go from there. So I already know, as I listen myself, that was a lot, but I felt like I had to build all that for you.
Donny, I love it because I think as you're sharing all of that, I'm reminded of during my grad school, I got a master's degree in leadership and Christian leadership especially, but we read this book and I did this study on Ritz-Carlton. And in their organization, they literally allow every single person on their staff to be an owner, to think like an owner and not just an employee. And they give them permission to meet a need, no matter what it is. And so there's all these stories. I won't even attempt to tell them because I won't do them justice. But there's all these stories. If you even Google it, I'm sure you could find some of them. But the bellhops and the custodian staff, they would, something would happen, and, people would have a need. And even though it may not be their area of service or expertise, they had permission to go meet those needs. And so in essence, that's kind of the framework of what I'm hearing you say, of like, look, you're not just the door holder for the people who are coming into church. You get to be a need meter. You get to see and understand what's going on. And so maybe somebody needs a hug, and maybe they need a listening ear. And, when you say, good morning, how are you? And they're like, I'm okay. You have permission to dive deeper into that conversation and leave your post at holding the door and go sit and talk with them for a few minutes and pray with that person. And so I'm making up an example, but
Yeah.
that seeing needs and this network of needs, helping people to have a lens for that, that's a huge deal. And I love that, Donny, because I think that does help play into this idea of owners, that people would own the ministry, they'd own the vision of the church, rather than just I'm a volunteer and I'm serving, I help with this ministry, or I help do whatever the pastor says needs done. So
Right.
there is a mindset shift there that I love. So let's go. Incentivize. Talk that one through. Just an example.
Yeah. So for incentivize, I need to go all the way back, Eric, to when I was in 7th grade, and I had a 7th grade teacher who encouraged her students. Her name was Miss Diane Dickerson. And she said, if you will do your devotions, and if you will journal them every day, and you will show me that you've journaled it, and just write down what you read, and you can just have a few, maybe just a sentence. It could be a paragraph of like what you learned. And if you do this for an entire semester, and you get you mess up one day, that's okay. But besides that, no more mess ups one day. Then I'm going to take you out to Ponderosa Steakhouse. I don't know how many people would even know. I don't even know if Ponderosa actually still exists. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. But I remember, Eric, not really caring that much about reading my Bible, but I really cared about my teacher saying like, hey, this is, I could just tell like this must be a really important thing. And so much so that she was going to actually, she didn't have a budget for this. And in the end, I still ended up having to pay a little bit for the Ponderosa. She ended up giving like each of us like $4 or $5 that we were able to spend. And I remember like, oh man, I had to come with like another $5 to do it. But it was just, her heart was, I just want you to know that I just feel like this is such an important part of your life that I'm going to spend some of my own money, and anyone that wants to take me up on this offer, I will treat you to Ponderosa. I'll give you some money to spend to do that. And Eric, that my mom had told me a lot of things about reading my Bible every day, and there were other people, but for Donny Varney as a 7th grader, that teacher, knowing that there were students out there that were like, would take her up on that. And this is the truth. I'm not saying this actually works this way for everyone, but by the end of my 7th grade year, it had actually created in me a hunger and an interest and a curiosity and a habit that went way beyond, Ponderosa. And I actually decided and kept reading my Bible and journaling. And I know that, there's a lot of listeners who are like, well, that doesn't always like work out that cleanly in every single situation and blah, 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 blah. And I think that's true. And I don't think that this idea of incentivize is like this guaranteed 100%. It just like always works this way. But that it's the idea of like extrinsic motivation if it's towards something that really is something that we believe in and is a good thing, does eventually lead to this intrinsic motivation, this internal motivation. And so as we're in the people business and as we like are trying to get people to maybe like move spiritually, I think it is like totally fair game and great. And it actually says that we are willing to put our money where our mouth is and be like, you know what? If the one thing that is probably the obstacle in the way of you experiencing this is because you just aren't going to experience it for yourself, then let's just do whatever we can to bear that burden, to pay the way, to incentivize, to reward, to do anything we can to invest ourselves in that person, to convince them like, listen, I will pay for this. I will do whatever I can for you to do this, because I'm convinced that if you get into that environment, if you do that thing, eventually no amount of money is going to matter anyway, because you're going to believe in it for yourself so much that I'll be able to back away and you're welcome. And now you're well on your way. But sometimes it starts with extrinsic motivation, which eventually will lead to that internal motivation and drive to do it for themselves. So yeah, that would, that happened to me. I've seen it with my children. I've seen it in the ministries that we've been a part of. And one example of many is we have a program called Game Day. And what we've realized is there are just some things that as a ministry we just really believe in. And one of them would be we really believe in our Power Kids ministry. And what we've realized is, man, we see it, we've experienced it as a church and ministry, and we know that, like, man, there are so many people in our community, they just don't know about it. They don't actually know how much this program can like change kids' lives, and they don't really realize how intentional of a ministry it is and how wonderful it is for the kids and this safe environment and all these things. And so what we've decided is we're just going to incentivize all of the people who are part of the program, because over half of them have literally never experienced Power Kids. And so we're like, what can we do? Can we give them a water bottle? Can we give them a t-shirt? Can we put them in a drawing for a $300 gift card to Great Wolf Lodge? Can we give them ice cream? Can we, and the list goes on of various things that we can do, but we're like, we will kind of do whatever we can to let you know that, man, and what we believe, and we've seen this happen over and over again, is like the water bottle got you in the door and you experienced Power Kids for the first time. And once you've experienced it, again, maybe not everybody, but there's a ton of families that are like, oh, I had no idea that this was like what your Power Kids ministry is. My kid loved it. They had an amazing time. And now they're dragging us to church because now their kid wants to be a part of it. Well, at the end of the day, it's as simple and as crazy as it seems. It's like it was a water bottle that kind of started this thing. And it was this treasure map that we created that incentivized these kids to be a part of something that we really believed in. And that extrinsic motivation has now led to an intrinsic motivation that has nothing to do with the water bottle. They just love that experience and they want to be a part of it. So I just think that we should be willing to do things like that to help maybe have people take a next step.
Oh, Donny, you're giving us a gift here, and we don't have time to break this all out, but my mind is like spinning with all these ideas that I think if as pastors, as ministry leaders, you stop and ask the question, how do we incentivize our people to take next steps in their faith, in their relationship with God, in their service to the church, in using the gifts and abilities that they've given them, you'll find some things there. Because what Donny, what you're saying, it's not just about children's ministry. It's hardwired into our DNA that that's why video games are a thing. That's why accomplishing competitive in even us as adults. It's built into how God created us. And so there are very much opportunities to help incentivize, to encourage people to take next steps. It may very well even be something as simple as we'd love for you to join a life group or a small group in our church, because there you'll be able to experience community and relationships. And so to go back to like the understanding the needs of what people have, when you can identify those and then begin to incentivize, you're strategically thinking through, how do we encourage our people to take the next step? Because like what you just said with Power Kids, with the children's ministry at your church, it's valuable to help meet those needs and incentivize the next step, because greater is the reward for them to get plugged in and connected with those things because of what God can do through that. So talk to us, Donny, about the convenience, which is so hard at times, but how have you seen the C making that a value to encourage people to take that next step beyond there?
Well, I will just get super practical with this one and just kind of jump right in and just kind of say this. With convenience, it's mostly related to people's time, and any sort of a next step that we're trying to offer. And in the context of what we're kind of talking about, we just have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families that we've experienced that enter into a sports ministry environment, but they're not really passionate necessarily about their church environment. So we're like, how can we bring the church to you? You love this basketball league, you love this fitness class, you love this sports camp, but you don't necessarily know about our marriage and care ministry. You don't know about our Power Kids ministry. You don't know about our family ministry. You don't know about our Give It Away ministry, our missions ministry. How can we introduce you to these things? And so a lot of this we stumbled upon because it wasn't working very well, but we tried to offer all of these next step opportunities after our program was done, or outside of a time that our program is running. So an example of this would be this Game Day Youth Basketball and Cheerleading League. And we're like, hey, they have literally for 10 weeks in a row, they've already set aside Tuesday night from 7 to 8:15 for 10 weeks in a row. It's literally a part of, they've already now moved out their calendar. They've cleared it out. They're coming, they're showing up, and they're attending. And so it was very painful for us to do this initially, but finally it took us like 7 seasons to do this. But we wanted desperately to create this, what we were calling this game day family night, where parents could also, we're investing so much in the kids. What can we do to bring the parents in and introduce them to all these different great ministries? And we kept trying to do it outside of their practice schedule or their game schedule. And then finally we're like, you know what? How about we literally just do it at the exact same time that they're already coming to a practice night, and basically just call it like a parent practice night and kind of just change everything about it. In other words, let's make it convenient. Now, the reality was this. It was incredibly inconvenient for us, because in our context, what that meant is that we were going to have to recreate this experience 16 times. What we were really trying to do is create some sort of environment where we could maybe do it 4 times or maybe 2 times. But we're like, man, if we're going to have to ask our Power Kids ministry and our family ministry and our marriage and care ministry and our missions and other things, we're going to have them do this Monday night at 5 p.m., Monday night at 6 p.m., Monday night at 7 p.m., Monday night at 8 p.m., Tuesday, same thing, Wednesday, Thursday, same thing. And we're going to have to just do this. But super inconvenient for us. But for everyone else, it was incredibly convenient. They've already, in their weekly schedule, this was already a blocked off time. And so all of a sudden, something that we were getting 10% of people to attend because it was like after the season or outside the schedule. It was like 95% of these parents are showing up. They're a part of it. We made it very fun and engaging. But at the end of the day, we were able to kind of missionally do everything that we wanted to do in terms of exposing them and introducing them to some of the other things going on in our church. And at the end of the day, it was because we made it convenient. And so that's in our context. But I think as we're looking at people's schedules and people's times, oftentimes as ministry leaders, we end up needing, I think, to sacrifice our convenience, make it inconvenient for us, but do, even if it's at great length and great work and great effort. But if we ask the question, first and foremost, how can we make this as incredibly convenient as possible for the people that we're trying to serve? I think that goes a long way.
Donny, I love that because, again, as you're explaining that, and I'm kind of just thinking through like our audience and the context that a lot of these listeners might be experiencing. James Clear wrote a book called Habits. And he, in that book, he talks about habit stacking. Now follow me here. What you're talking about is kind of like ministry stacking. And so it's this idea of like, hey, if you've got guys coming to play basketball every Saturday morning at your church, can you ministry stack and get your men's ministry leader to go play basketball? Can you get the youth pastor to come on a Saturday morning and go play basketball and be intentional and introduce those ministries, look at the needs, and then incentivize getting plugged in and connected? I'm seeing churches that are doing this all over the place. And literally, we were just in Indiana, and there's a church out there where they're like, hey, what if we just open up the gym after youth group on a Wednesday night for guys to play basketball? And a lot of them are now coming to youth group because they're like, well, I already go play basketball on Wednesday night, so why don't I just go a little earlier and go attend the youth group? And so these high school students, these high school boys who love basketball are now showing up at church because they ministry stacked, something right on top of that. And then the youth pastors are building it into their schedule where they're just going and hanging out, and they're teasing the guys playing basketball, and they're officiating and poking the bear about like, hey, you missed that shot, and they're building the relationship with them in a way that's convenient to them, but incentivizing meeting needs. So Donny, take it home now. Expectation. This could be maybe the front, maybe it's the end of this process, but how do you think through this expectation side? And again, give us an example. Yeah. Good.
When I was talking with you earlier, I said it would be nice if the word nice started with an E, but it didn't, because I do think this is actually the first one that matters the most. All the other ones, it doesn't matter. But I would just say, first and foremost, when it comes to dealing with people, no one wants to have this bait and switch experience. And we all say it, and we all believe that, and we all understand that, and we all have been in the situations where all of a sudden we're like, oh, I think everything just sort of like shifted, and I feel like your true colors are now being revealed, or your agenda is now being exposed, or this was really what it was all about the whole time. And all of a sudden they're second guessing maybe the relationship that you have developed or the service that you've been trying to provide. And you're like, oh, I think this is actually, they've kind of just been doing all of this just to like accomplish this. And now all of a sudden things don't actually feel as real as they really were. And so I just think it's really important. What we've experienced is just set those expectations at the very beginning. And if you do, our experience has been people, they appreciate the fact that you're like, okay, that's who you are. That's what you're excited about. That's what you believe in. That's the mission that God has called you to. That's the thing that you're passionate about. And we hear you and we see that. You didn't do it in an overwhelming way. you didn't do it as like the one and only thing that you're going to talk about, or have this, the tone and the intensity and the messaging and the content that hasn't been like everything that this is about. But it's just kind of been this consistent thread that you've woven in to everything you've done, not in this huge, overwhelming way, but it's literally kind of from the beginning all the way to the end. This is just sort of who we are. This is what we care about. This is what we love to talk about. And it's also in the context of other things that we're trying to do and accomplish with you, whether it's relationally, or programmatically, or meeting a need, or in the context of a series that our church might be doing, or whatever the environment might be. So for us, it's a 25% rule is what we've done in sports ministry. And what we've just said is we just don't want to ever, in anything we do, have our mission dominate more than 25% of the time allotted in what we're doing. And it's not because we don't like care about our mission or feel like it's not worthy of we would want to make it 100% of what we're doing, but we're like, let's just have it be a part of what we do, but not everything. And again, everyone has to kind of translate what ministry they're a part of and what they're doing. Realize for us, we are providing a service. Usually it has something to do with athletics. It's a program. It's usually something that people are even paying for. And we try to do it with excellence. We are trying to truly meet people's needs. We are truly trying to get to know people. But we also are doing that while simultaneously letting them know that we actually, at the end of the day, this is what we really care about. And we're wanting to engage you here. We are truly actually wanting to create an environment that makes sense to you, and it's something that's quality. But we're going to just sort of let you know all along the way that you're actually surrounding yourself with people that are most passionate about this. And it would be like Jesus. And it would be what we would define as a life-changing experience, is introducing them to the love and the story of Jesus and helping them move spiritually. We just don't wait till the end to make that big ask or make that big invitation. And we just kind of have it be just a slow, steady, ongoing, consistent, never more than 25% of the actual environment that they're a part of all the way through, and just set those expectations.
That's awesome. I love that, because really again, to go back to understanding our human nature, we want to know what's expected when we sign up for something, even if I'm volunteering. What am I volunteering my time? What is it that you're asking me to do? What is it that your expectation is that I meet? That's our human nature. So when you give an opportunity to serve in a ministry, and you clearly say, this is what this means, this is what this expectation is, now I know when I've succeeded, now I know when I've missed the mark. It allows the leader to come back and have a conversation. Hey, I thought we agreed. This is what we were going to work on. This is how we're going to spend our time. These are the priorities. These are how we're going to meet needs. This is how we encourage people to take next steps. Now you're pulling in the same direction for the common goal and the mission vision of your church. So, Donny, this is amazing. Thank you for sharing this acronym with us. I hope that it's one that people will remember, the need to be nice in ministry, but really it's helping equip people to pull in the same direction, to work together, to work through concentric circles, to build teams that build teams. This is an amazing tool. I really hope and pray that as you're listening to this, if you're a ministry leader, if you're a pastor, there's a lot here that you could honestly sit down with your staff. You could wrestle this through a little bit and think through, how are we implementing these pieces, these 4 things within our staff, within the teams that we're building, to help our volunteers own the ministry, to help them even encourage and walk alongside of people as they look to take next steps in their ministry. So I'll say this, Donny, I think our hearts would be aligned if there's anything, and I mean anything, that Momentum can do to be a part of helping you succeed in these areas. Reach out to us. Donny and I would love to be a part of that. We'd love to provide resources. We'd love to pull the volunteer applications or whatever it is. Reach out to us. info@buildmomentum.org is our email address, and we'd love to be a resource to help encourage you to do all of this, to not only be nice, but to build teams that build teams and help walk people through their faith journey as well and encourage you in that process. So, Donny, thank you. We're going to wrap up here. Any final thoughts or encouragement?
I would just wholeheartedly agree with that last sentiment that you said, Eric. Momentum would love to help anyone unpack any of this stuff. I was actually a little bit blown away and encouraged. The very first time I was on this podcast, there were several people that reached out to me and wanted to have a further conversation about some of the things that I had said. And so we are all game to do that all day long. That's one of the main reasons why we exist. So I wholeheartedly endorse what you said there, and we are completely aligned as far as that goes. Yep.
Good. I love it when a plan comes together, brother. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. We'll see you next time on the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.